And we're good? All right. All right. Well, you've probably, since you've been listening to the show. So
yeah.
You haven't been watching.
I have not been watching.
So you don't know that, well, I guess you still know that we don't really do a real start typically.
Right.
Like
we're just kind of wade in.
We just kind of wade in.
Yeah.
And but we are but welcome to the studio, Corey Vickers.
Thank you.
Corey Vickers. I didn't mean to say that like
no, it's all good.
Vickers.
I'll take it as long as you.
Oh, we're kind of
right.
Now Corey has already topped off his drink. So
cheers, Mike.
So salud. We did this already, but we got to do it for the camera. So Corey's a fan of the show. The other one, by the way, is
I want to meet this person, whoever it is.
The other guy who's listening.
Clearly a connoisseur of
By the way,
podcasts.
how's the bourbon?
Fantastic.
This is so as you know, because we.
Right.
For those following along at home, I started out with making a rum old fashioned, and we had a long discourse. Well, I had a long discourse on why I was making it with white rum instead of dark rum, and then I got fancy and put a dark rum floater on top. Except I didn't.
Or at least you thought you did.
Except I didn't. I grabbed the wrong bottle, and because the Scotch bottle and the dark rum bottle are very similar shaped. They're both kind of square,
it's true, actually,
and tall.
Yeah, now that I think
the Johnny Walker Black. And,
indeed.
Oh, we're not supposed to mention product.
Right. Don't do that.
Not without because I want to make them pay if I'm going to.
Absolutely, all day long.
So I have a rum old fashioned with a Scotch floater, which at the moment really just tastes like Scotch. I'm not really getting anything else. So,
and I have bourbon.
Yeah, bourbon.
Nice.
You had apparently I wasn't heavy enough on the pour.
No. You were good. You were good. I just needed to top it up.
Okay, good.
To be prepared.
Are we good now? We're ready to roll.
I'm ready to roll.
All right. Okay, where are we going to start? First, now I do have. I know you're wondering why I got my Wall Street Journal magazine.
Yes, I was wondering about that.
This is the issue that came in the Saturday edition.
With Will Ferrell on it.
Saturday, with Will Ferrell on the cover. Now, the first thing I want to tell you is, if I ever become famous, and you see somebody taking a picture of me like that, you need to just put me out of my misery.
Yeah, but honestly, only Will Ferrell can really pull that off.
I can't. Should I hold this? Am I allowed to show somebody?
I don't know.
I mean, I paid for it.
Dude, it's your podcast.
I don't see why I can't show it. He just looks so snuggly and introspective. Anyway, there's something in here though that I want to get to because I thought it might you might have something interesting.
Send us down a path.
But first, so we've only known each other for a little while.
Yeah.
But I know a little more about you than I would know about other people.
It's been about 6 months, though, right?
And we did go drinking one time.
This is true.
So
we've been drinking a couple times.
A couple times. That memory thing.
You remember that, yeah.
That memory thing. But for the sake of posterity, like, who are you? Like, how did Corey Vickers get started in the world? Not all the details, just
dirty details. Born and raised in Houston. Strangely, and I'll say this, and you and I talked about this a little bit previously.
I'm getting the rum now. Okay,
finally.
It's like
and it's good still.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's interesting.
You're still thinking about it though.
I'm okay. Keep going.
Yeah. Born and raised in Houston to teenage parents. So I was sitting in the audience when my father walked across the stage for graduation at Cy-Fair High School.
Oh, shit. Wow. Yeah. Wow. But, times were different back then.
Times were different.
Because I feel like you're very much older than I am. So you're a lot, you're a lot older than me.
More mature, perhaps. So
teenage parents.
Yeah. So mom never got her high school degree.
In Houston,
high school diploma. Yep, in Houston.
You're the second native Houstonian.
I know. I heard that.
That used to count for something, and
we're a rare breed.
Yeah, people don't even really understand what it means anymore.
Yeah,
because they'll say I moved here with my parents when I was 7. Oh, well, you're close enough.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, no, that's not how
you're a naturalized
works.
Houstonian.
In fact, my wife, who grew up in the Houston area, originally in A-Leaf before it was scary.
Yeah.
Way back when. Because this is how hardcore. This is how hardcore the native Houstonian thing used to be. because her father was in the Air Force when she was born on a base in New Mexico, in Alamogordo.
Yeah.
She does not qualify as a native Houstonian.
Absolutely not.
She was not born here, right?
Indeed.
Yeah. So
just like both of my daughters who spent most of their lives here in Houston, they're not natives because they were born when I was in the service.
That's right. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Seems awfully. It's not very.
It's a bit exclusive, but
a little
for good reason.
discriminatory against.
No. Wait. We're the most diverse city on the planet, I would argue.
I'm saying, why are we discriminating against the people? I think that
we're just also inclusive.
the people who aren't native Houstonians but almost are should get some sort of like guaranteed income, I think, from the government.
So I'm gonna hold you there. Full stop. Pump those brakes really hard.
So anyway, so you grew up here. What part of town?
So I was out in the Northwest. I went to Jersey Village High School. My wife and I met
You're
there.
still out in the Northwest.
Yeah,
You're a boring guy.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah.
So my family's been in the same district, so Cy-Fair ISD for we've done 3 generations now, graduating from Cy-Fair high schools.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So it's home. Other than my military service, I've been in this area.
Okay. Okay, and so there's a military thing here.
Yep.
happened.
So graduated from high school, went to the Air Force Academy. I was fortunate enough to get picked up for that, and did 4 years there in Colorado Springs. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Suffered quite a bit, as every cadet does. And then bounced around a fair amount. I got selected to be a logistics officer out of the academy, and so my first
it's like
you're laughing already.
I always thought like being a logistics officer in the military is kind of like being sent to hell, like because everything that we ever see, or at least purgatory, because anything that we ever see like in the movies. Like the logistics part always seems like it's a complete and utter disaster.
Oh, it is.
Nobody can ever get anything. Like it's not,
That's the beauty of it, right?
You gotta like hook up with these guys who know how to scavenge because you can't get anything through the regular channels.
Absolutely. That's what you want, right?
So,
you want to step into the disaster. That's
right.
Stepping into the storm. If you're a pilot, you're just told, deliver this package from point A to point B and return.
Yeah.
And
it's so
right.
so dull, really.
I can train
It's really dull.
we are training computers to do that now.
That's a good point. So logistics officer. So what? And you were in for like 6 or 8 years or something like
Just
that.
under 8 years active duty.
Yeah.
And got out in early 2001. And of course, we all know what happened later in 2001 and decided that it was time to, you heard about that. Yeah. So decided that it was time to make the official exit from the service and send in my paperwork.
Yeah. All right. So what's like your favorite story? Like if you're just hanging out with a friend drinking, like what's your favorite like logistics story from like there was this one time when there has to be one.
So there's just a bunch of ridiculous ones. I could talk about processing cargo for all the deployments and activities that we were doing in Bosnia, in that area when we were going to war in that space. One of the examples is one of the critical items that we had to get into theater was toilet paper. They were basically out of toilet paper, and we filled up a aircraft with pallet loads of toilet paper because otherwise we were going to shut down operations in a bad way. So, that's one.
This was where?
So I was operating in Ramstein, Germany.
Oh yeah.
And we were moving all of the Northern European materials into the Southern European theater, and we got a call from downrange. Bosnia, Kosovo, Herzegovina, that area.
No toilet paper.
And no toilet paper.
So COVID was not the first time that you faced that particular.
Yeah. So I'm a veteran of that,
Yeah.
and so consequently, I never ran out of toilet paper during COVID.
Okay, all right. So that's
gotta
a win.
see these things
That's a
coming.
win. That's a win.
This is logistics planning.
You got to see what. All right, what is there another one?
Yeah, typical ridiculous things, right? So I'm in Saudi Arabia, and we have a shipment hung up in customs. In the shipment, it's a container load of materials that we need for operations is a package of sugar-free gum, a case of sugar-free gum. Sugar-free gum has xylitol in it. Xylitol is an alcohol. This is a Muslim nation. So
You got to be.
it gets quarantined.
No way.
That's
Come
no
on.
joke. No joke. So had to sit down and have tea with the Saudi customs official and make sure that we were saying, hey, we'll take this out of the shipment. This is why it has an alcohol in it, xylitol, and we'll.
Okay, we gotta back up on this. So, are the customs people there like so well trained that they know specifically what like obscure alcohol compounds are in?
So typically anything with an ingredient in there with an OL at the end indicates alcohol.
So they read the ingredients on everything that comes in?
They read for those types of words. And I can guarantee you it's not the customs officials per se. It's their administrative staff. And so they're taught and trained to flag anything that looks like this.
But the point is, you bring a pallet of stuff in, they got to break that down.
Oh, yeah.
And read.
It's on the manifest.
Read everything.
Yeah.
But the ingredients, so on the manifest it says chewing gum.
Right. Here are the ingredients of.
On the manifest.
Absolutely.
So they don't actually have to break the pallet down.
No. You don't unbundle it. You don't break the seals on that. It's just, here's what the manifest says. Here are the ingredients of these things. And they really are looking for alcohol specifically.
Yeah, because you never know how we're going to try to sneak it in. And
I will not confirm nor deny that might have happened on occasion.
Well, I'll catch up with you later on how to fool you. But it's interesting because under this whole heading of the American dream and like a life in America in general, and this comes up, as you know, because you listen, because you're listening, it comes up where sometimes we just stumble on things where we go, wow, like there's yet another thing that we take for granted that isn't a huge ordeal for us.
Yeah.
And when you live somewhere else, like now I know not to send my friends in Saudi Arabia I got to send them stuff with sugar in it.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't send them the sugar.
Send them the makings.
I got to send them the sugar gum, like the gum that's got sugar in it.
Yes.
Whatever. The non-sugar
free.
Right.
That doesn't sound right. Right.
It's probably like some sort of dentist racket in Saudi Arabia, right? Where the dentists know that if we keep the sugar-free gum out of the country,
we're going to make money.
We're going to make
absolutely
clearly.
But then you just go across the causeway to Bahrain and you get whatever you need,
whatever you want. All right. So,
but to your point,
yeah,
things we take for granted in this country are our ability to decide on the system, right? We decide on the system that we want by and large, and we have a participative government that allows us to say these are the things we want.
Yeah. I mean, it's hard. Yeah, because sometimes it's hard to, at least for me personally, to continue to acknowledge that because I get so irritated about all the bullshit that, like, all the new, like, ways that government wants to like stick their fingers into everything that's going on.
Totally.
But when you kind of hold it up to the big picture globally, we're still.
Oh, the news just came out.
But it's a slippery slope, as they say.
Absolutely. Well, the news came out last week that I think it was Indonesia. In fact, I know it was Indonesia that was going to enforce specific rules associated with being a Muslim nation.
Yeah.
So the government there has very much so said, we are a Muslim nation, we're going to operate this way. I'm not casting any stones at that, but the government has decreed that this is the way it's going to be. At least in the United States, the system is set up in such a way that we can push back on that. As the voting population, we can push back on that. So
Except we can. In Arizona. Everywhere else you can't.
But we can choose, right? By and large, we can choose who our representatives are, what the legislation is that we will entertain, and if the system gets off the tracks, we have an obligation and a responsibility and the opportunity to right it.
In theory,
yeah, in theory.
How much do you think people? So, if you went backward in time to my parents and your parents. Their generation, and you surveyed how many people, just in general American society, are aware, like that's our role in this whole thing, right? Like what you just said, probably more than like how many people now do you think really?
That's a beautiful question. So I actually want to go back to one of the episodes that you had with your barber.
My barber, Cosme.
Yeah, Cosme. So I thought it was a fantastic episode. And one thing that you two talked about is being able to put your eyes on and know the enemy. And so the statement that came out was, I think you asked Cosme, do we know who the enemy is? And he said, well, we can't see that person. We can't see that enemy now.
Yeah.
And I will argue, and this is kind of a...
It's funny, I don't remember this at all.
Yeah, well, you're welcome.
The memory thing, yeah.
Yeah. But I would argue that we've seen the enemy, and the enemy is us.
Yeah.
That's an old statement. But in fact, I would say that in order to save the dream,
Yeah.
title of the podcast,
Right.
we have to first look at ourselves and our immediate control, right? So I have to look at myself. Am I doing the right things? Am I owning up to that? Am I looking at my children and what lessons I'm teaching them and instilling in them, values that I'm instilling in them? Are those the right values? Am I being truly introspective about that and showing up in a way that by conscious choice, I'm doing the things that I think are going to make a difference? And I think we've lost sight of that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Making ourselves into the type of people that, into the sort of people necessary to be effective and to carry the thing on and to keep it right.
Yeah.
That's it's very it's very you were never like you haven't been a monk or anything, right? Like you were never Brother Corey.
No, I've never been a monk, but
because that's sort of like the thing is it's like the inner life precedes, like you have to get the inner life right before the outer life, and so
yeah, there's a self accountability aspect right away.
You'd be a good monk, by the way.
I appreciate.
They don't
that.
move around a lot.
I almost have that same haircut, so I could probably I'd qualify real quickly.
I got the thing in the back, though.
Yeah. No, me too.
Oh, you do.
I'm good. Yeah. I think that accountability aspect applies in so many ways, and many times we're looking at everybody else to try to hold them accountable without looking at ourselves first and saying, am I accountable to do the things and behave in the ways that are going to contribute towards saving that dream?
Yeah. Well, it's true, because everything you see in all the dialogue in the public square, as it were, is all outwardly.
Yeah.
It's all about.
It's the Democrats. It's the Republicans.
You should be doing this.
Trump,
you shouldn't be doing that.
It's Biden. It's this person. It's that person.
And we need to do all these things for people, right?
Sure.
We need to make sure that we. Yeah.
Now, that being said, there are systems in place in our country that I think fundamentally are not serving the American dream for the population at large. Now, I'm not naive enough to think that even that I'm not privileged in some way by being a white heterosexual male growing up the way I did. I'm not stupid, and I can't dismiss the privileges that I was given because of that, even just walking down the street. And I have plenty of friends who, showing up just because of the color of their skin, were treated differently.
Yeah, right.
So to me, though, that is a system that we can change in this country.
Yeah. So is that, though, here's the big question, though, that has been, I think, not adequately debated. Is that, so what kind of a system is that? Like, is it a system? And if it is a system that somebody designed intentionally, or is it something like, was the system created that way, or is it just kind of a byproduct of the way that humans, like imperfect humans, end up behaving?
Yes and yes.
Yeah.
And yes, I'll go one step further. I think that there are aspects of the system that make it more difficult for people of color, people of different genders, people of different sexual orientations, people of disabilities, for instance.
Sure.
Make it more difficult for them in life than somebody that is a healthy, able-bodied white male. I think that is a truism. There are system designs that are in place that we need to dismantle.
So I'm intrigued by this because you seem like a sensible person. So what like an example? You have an example? I don't mean to put you on the spot.
No. Great
actually, I do
question.
mean to
Easy example. So, and you know that I work with a non-for-profit called Dive Pirates.
Oh yeah.
So Dive Pirates takes
That's the other not-for-profit.
indeed.
That you work.
So we as an organization take folks who have some physical disability on scuba dives and give them an opportunity to experience that freedom associated with being a diver.
Oh, right. Yeah.
In working with folks with disabilities, it's very clear that just the physical infrastructure of life that they experience on a day-to-day basis is not at all configured in a way, structurally, systematically, to enable them to live fully. So we spend an awful lot of time as an organization highlighting the gaps where someone that is completely wheelchair bound, for example, or somebody that's missing a limb, for example, are going to struggle to live a completely fulfilled life in the same way or in a similar way that you and I would.
Yeah. Yeah.
But to me, that's a system gap that we can choose to solve.
Is it why is that gap? Is the gap there because of oversight? Because somebody didn't think about it?
Yeah, I think there are a million different reasons. Maybe even asking the why question is not even necessary at this point. If we see the gap and we know that it should be different.
I just think that there's a difference between and especially in the arguments that have been circulating, there is a difference between a system that's intentionally designed to favor somebody over somebody else and something that is more like we didn't think about that, and maybe even we didn't think about it isn't a very good excuse. Maybe like, well, you should have thought about it, right?
Yeah.
This is what my wife usually says to me. Right? Well, you should have thought about that, right? But it's still not as kind of insidious, right? Like being lazy in your thinking or in your doing isn't quite as insidious as intentionally trying to harm somebody or intentionally trying to have an advantage over somebody else.
I agree with you, although I think that both exist.
Yeah.
So I think in certain circumstances, systems have been put in place to limit the ability for others to live a fulfilled, meaningful, happy, richer life. I think that's happened deliberately in certain circumstances. I would argue that you and I, as reasonable, caring people, would not allow those types of systems to exist if we knew about them.
Yeah.
Or that we would push against them and we would fight them, and we certainly wouldn't show up and allow that to happen ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, fair enough. So, okay, so where are we going with this? So,
well, so the point is, partially it's about the systems. Additionally, it's about ourselves, and it's about us showing up on a day-to-day basis within our span of control to make a difference in our own life in a way that's going to be meaningful towards that American dream.
Right. Yeah, no, I really like that distinction of like get yourself right. So in the abstract, that makes sense. What do you see as actually, you know what? This is a good time. This is a perfect time
to bring out the article, whatever it is. Yeah, I'm nervous about this.
Actually, it's very simple. Okay, so this was the December. So if you get a Wall Street Journal subscription once a month, you get this magazine that mostly is filled up with pictures of things that I cannot afford to buy, and if I could afford to buy them, I'm not sure that I even would.
I was going to say, there's an element of would afford to buy.
There's also this page, which remarkably, so this is where they show the photos of everybody who's supposed to be like, you know, like the people who are somebody, and they got photos of them together. Like, here's so-and-so and so-and-so, and here's so-and-so. And I looked at every single one of these, and I don't know any of these names, not a single one. Like, not a single person. And so clearly I'm not hanging in the right circles. But right here, so in spite of the horrible, I just can't even.
Come on, man. You don't like this?
And the sweater.
Right? I mean, that's like a, what is it, Cosby Show sweater right there. All the more reason why he shouldn't be wearing it.
Yeah, all the more reason. Anyway, we're not going to get into a fashion discussion. All right, so they do these things called the one sheet.
Yeah.
The one sheet is where they ask, you know, what's the one something that you something every time you something, right? So, and so there's a couple of I have a number of ones that I really like on here. Like what's the one habit you wish you could break? Shoplifting. You got to picture Will Ferrell delivering this,
Totally.
the answer, right? You know, or who's the one person you call in a crisis? Snoop Dogg. So
actually, I think Martha Stewart does that too, right?
I think she does. But the one that caught my attention is that made me think of this conversation is what one sentence best sums up your philosophy of life? What one sentence best sums up your philosophy of life? And he said, winners win.
Winners win.
Which is kind of funny. It's kind of good for a chuckle, right? Especially if you picture Will Ferrell delivering the line. But I thought about that. Like, winners win. And so on the one hand, we have this culture that we like to rag about a lot, which is everybody gets a trophy, right?
Right.
And
man, I thought about that today too. Same thing.
Yeah. On the other hand, we have a point that you've brought out, which is, well, actually, the fact is not everybody's got the same kind of capability, whatever,
or a fair shake,
So when you think about, and especially in light of your you get your military background, you got your and also some pretty good thoughts. Winners win. What do you think about? Like, as a life philosophy, is there something that we can like pull out of that besides just that it's kind of funny?
So I guess it really kind of comes down to what you mean by winner. So I think winners, and it goes back, Cosme, right? Is your
yeah.
So Cosme,
I got it. You and Cosme, he lives in the same area we do.
I'm gonna get my hair cut by that guy.
We got to all get together.
Right on. So I think I would define winner as someone who reflects on themselves.
Yeah.
Who takes ownership and accountability for the way they show up on a day-to-day basis, who imparts that want. You guys talked about wanting to make it better every single day, who imparts that want in the way they behave, but also to their children and their center of control, their span of control, and who make it happen every single day, right? I mean, that to me, that's a winner. That's somebody that is going to be playing the long game, that's going to show up early in the morning, work hard, want to make it a little bit better. And that's the type of lesson that was taught to me by my old man.
Yeah.
And that's what I hope that I imparted to my kids. Show up, do your very, very best, take accountability for the things that you are doing and what you have done. Be conscious of how you're showing up, and the rest of it will take care of itself, assuming that the systems are in place to make that happen. In the event that there's not a system in place to make that happen, we fortunately live in a country where you can go out and change the system.
Okay, wow, there's a lot to
unpack,
dissect there. All right, so a good point. Yeah, so when you hear somebody say in kind of a humorous way, well, winners win. Well, no shit, Sherlock, of course, because they won. But it's not. You're not a winner because you won. What you're saying is, like, you already have the constitution of a winner because
you're a winner.
Because you're a winner.
Your constitution defines a winner.
Yeah, and
a loser.
I'm not sure people really know what that means anymore. Constitution, but
I think that's the deal,
in
right?
both cases, in both
words. But I think that the losers are the ones that are saying that person or that group or that system stopped me from being all that I could otherwise be. So poor, pitiful me, somebody owes me. That needs to come off the table entirely.
Yeah. There's a lot of that.
Unfortunately, yeah.
Well, there's a lot of that, not only for people saying poor, pitiful me, somebody needs to... Oh, speaking of winners...
You have won.
This is at the ARC Specialties Christmas party, Friday night. I was up $8,400 at the craps table.
And?
I was up $9,400.
But?
And this dumbass rolled a 7 on his first throw.
Painful.
And I lost $1,000 right then, and I shut it down. It's not real money, obviously. Dan and the guys here, they don't. But I was supposed to cash this in because there's bragging rights associated with whoever was up the most. And I feel like I missed. Anyway, we'll put this here.
We're going to come back to that
with my Blarney Stone. I don't know if you know the story about my Blarney Stone. Blarney the Stone. I'll tell you that story later. There's a lot of there's a lot of people. Poor, pitiful me, somebody owes me. But it seems like now what we have even more of is a whole bunch of other people who are saying that on behalf of, like poor, pitiful this person and poor, pitiful those people. Like people who are like carrying the torch for other people who are supposedly not winning and ought to be.
Great. Go change the system so that the system allows for an equitable method for that person to be successful. That's one. And if you feel like those people need help, you, within your span of control, go help them individually.
That's crazy talk.
All right, yeah, I know I'm insane. but what we've done is we said, oh, well, the government now, and you had a guest on here that talked a little bit about this, the government now needs to put in these reparations or these structures that advantage others in certain ways.
Yeah, well, so let's talk about what does changing the system look like? Because there's a whole bunch of people right now that would like to change the system because their premise is that the system that this country was built on, that the book, by the way, this is
the book's here. Oh,
right there,
yeah.
So that's the part where when you're listening, you don't know what I'm doing because I'm coming off the mic and I'm pointing at something.
Yeah, pointing at the book.
I don't know what he's talking about.
But the book is here, by the way.
The book's here. So there's a whole bunch of people who are saying the system, okay, let me back up. There was a time when we could all of us who disagreed about what we ought to be doing in the country, there was this common, point where we could, or common ground where we could say, well, if we go back and look at what the founders intended or what the Constitution originally meant or what and then what would happen is, so we would all agree that was kind of like the right thing, and what we disagreed about was our interpretation of what they intended or what the Constitution, right? And so we'd argue about that, but the notion that it was set up in the beginning to be good was sort of given as kind of first principles. Now that's called into question. right? And so now there are people who say, well, no, actually it was shit from the beginning, and they were just a bunch of white supremacists who set everything up in a favorable way for them. So we really need to throw the Constitution out. We need to stop trying to figure out what the founders wanted. Those guys were evil, and let's just create what we really need now. So when you talk about changing the system, how do you, like, what's your compass for knowing how the system really ought to be changed? Like, do we throw the whole thing out? Obviously, I don't think you think that.
No, I don't think that.
So it's the slippery slope again.
Well, but here's the deal, right? I mean, we're in a great position to be able to go out and make those changes right now. So I would argue that the system is good in that it allows us to shape the future that we want as a country.
The system allows us to change the system.
That's it.
Which,
right?
Try that in China.
Yeah. No.
Although they did.
That's no joke.
They did make a fuss and got the COVID rules rolled back.
Sure, but they had to go out there and put themselves as significant in harm's way to make that happen.
Yeah, thank God it wasn't another Tiananmen Square.
Right. So, but in our system, the system allows for change. The system allows for us to participate. And so we can go out there and execute those changes to the extent that we think that needs to happen. So that's great. Now, look, were the founders perfect? Was the system set up perfectly at the beginning? Absolutely not. Yeah. Are we perfect now? No. We're more perfect than we once were because I think we have shaped that change over time.
Yeah.
And I would also argue that we will never be perfect. We will continuously shape that, and we should.
Right. Yeah, the old saying, right? If you ever find a bunch of people that are perfect, leave them alone.
Right on.
Don't
Run.
Don't get in there. Yeah, because you'll ruin it. Okay, but I want to come back to this. We have the ability to change. So you've made two really good points, but only two.
Well, I'm surprised it's two. I mean.
So one is we got to look at ourselves.
Actually, I think I'm reiterating points from previous shows, which are good. So I haven't made any point. I've just brought forward some.
I see what you're doing. There's the introspective thing, and we could dig into that. We could probably do a whole nother episode on how do I know what sort of person I ought to be. Such that I'm helping with this whole making this a place where we want to live and carrying on the American dream and better, richer, fuller, But this notion that, we have the ability to, that is one of the things when you think about is the American dream achievable? And over time things change and things can become more complicated but we have the ability to change or adjust. Maybe adjust is a better word. But how do we? But that's kind of where the trouble starts, because these people think it ought to be changed this way, and these people say change it that way, and that right? Like, how do you? And you said
I love that, right?
You said a minute ago, which is, hey, go out there and change it. And we said before that it's our responsibility to do so. But what does right look like?
So we talked about losing touch with the ability to be introspective and to be self-reflective and accountable to ourselves,
right?
Accountable for the way we're showing up. I think that's a gap. But we've also fractured the ability to have a conversation with people that hold different viewpoints than ourselves and hold two viewpoints in our heads that are very, very much different, and see value in both of those points of view without losing our ever-loving mind.
Yeah. No, you're right about that. Yeah.
So to me, going and changing the system, going and adjusting the system, tweaking the dials, so to speak, requires an actual meaningful dialogue that doesn't end up in a finger-pointing situation. You're of this camp, and so you're stupid and wrong and evil.
Right.
That's not true.
We're shutting down your Twitter account.
Now, fundamentally, that's not true. Fundamentally, this is a different point of view from someone who is relatively intelligent And we should value that person and have a dialogue and reinstate the ability to have a dialogue that has meaning to it rather than finger pointing.
Yeah. That's kind of what the whole the BrainPub idea is.
I love it.
Is that, but I fear that we are, like, our supply of people who have, like, enough, like, have a broad enough education, and I don't just mean like book-wise education, but and life experience, and because it seems like the echo chambers have been at work, and they're producing so many people that are so not only polarized in their thinking, but limited in their ability to, like the whole concept of understanding what other people think and why they think that.
Yeah.
Right.
Or allowing that to transpire in the conversation. So I have a dream.
Right.
That we set up these fight clubs.
I said that at the craps table.
Right. You're right. But,
I have a dream.
But we set up these fight clubs. I'll use that analogy.
Yeah, no, that's actually a perfect analogy.
And say, okay, we're going to get together, and there are going to be specific rules about how we have a conversation, and we're going to have people in the fight club that otherwise would fight, but because of these rules, they are obligated to have an intelligent conversation. How that's structured yet, I haven't determined, but I would love to make that a part of the way we live.
I think, though, that in order for that to be effective, I think we're kind of, I think between our society and our educational system, everything, it used to be just the universities that were the problem. Now it goes all the way down, right? I think we're producing, like, people who don't have, like, we don't have the right raw material for that.
Look, my wife is a teacher.
Glad I was careful about what I said.
Education is provided by the government, by and large, and so,
which in every other aspect of life we always assume it means it's crap.
And let me assure you,
and the post office, that's the other
right.
exception.
So let me assure you that the way we are rewarding and compensating our teachers would lean into the results being not so great. And there are those few exceptions. Props to my wife as one who genuinely care about this as a labor of love, irrespective of the compensation, irrespective of all the other BS that teachers have to go through.
Right.
So I think that we are growing a crop of young people that they're going to be really dependent upon their parents to say, you bring home the grades, you do really well in school, and you live by this code of conduct, and you operate in this way in order for them to turn out halfway decent at the end of their education that's provided by the government.
So, but even the ones who do well, what are they learning? Like, are they learning? I would love to get your wife's, what grade does she teach?
Second
grade. Okay, so that might be a little young for this. But
oh man, but that's where everything starts.
No, for sure. But are they learning to think and understand, like to think critically, or are they sort of like learning?
It depends on the class and depends on the teacher.
Yeah.
So I think yes in certain circumstances, but no by and large. And I'm going to tell you, that is a gap when it comes to parenting. Most of the challenges that come up within the classroom kind of really stem back to the home front and whether or not that's stable and capable and actually contributing to the education of the student.
Yeah. Well, and we don't. It's not a recent phenomenon. I mean, the shift in education toward, and neither one of us are education experts, but we did live in this country, for the last however many years growing up, and I can kind of look back and observe that the shift, like the educational shift, away from like a broad, kind of general liberal arts sort of, or not necessarily liberal arts, but liberal. And I don't mean liberal in the political sense.
Yeah,
I mean
diverse.
Yeah, right. Like that shift away from that toward kind of specialized technical learning, and by technical I don't just mean like computers, right? Like that started a long time ago.
True.
That started.
True.
That was probably even when we were kids.
Yeah, no doubt.
That was already happening. So you get to the point where you're the parents now of kids who were so if you get kids who are in your wife's class, second grade, what is that? 7 years old?
7 years old. Yeah.
So their parents are millennials?
Sure.
Yeah.
I never really can keep those straight.
Really?
No, I can't.
Seems so obvious to me.
Gen X, Gen Z, millennials.
So their parents are whatever in their early 30s, right?
Sure.
So they've already like. It seems like sometimes like, and there are exceptions, right? And I mention this from time to time that you can't. It's okay to generalize when you're trying to like figure out like what the hell's going on in the world, right? Like
if you call out the exception in that circumstance, then you've just distracted from the overall systematic structural change that you're trying to achieve.
Exactly.
That's beneficial for the 3 sigma that are in the middle of the bell curve.
Wow, that was a lot of math.
You're welcome.
Right there. That's good. Yes. So that's like the line on this side and the line on this side.
Yeah,
right?
on either side of that line.
Yeah, in between.
Assuming a normal distribution.
Normal distribution, right? Which
you can't really assume that.
you can't assume that. But so I guess the question is, have we? You put all these things together, the shift in education away from, and even if you leave out whether it was the right thing to do or not, like maybe it was the right thing to shift education towards like teaching people how to be specialists in particular things because that's how we build the economy, blah, 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 right? But if you take the shift away from kind of broad, like if you go back and look how somebody was educated like in the 1800s, it was very like most of us couldn't even read the assignments that they were given in 8th grade, right? Or whatever.
I think I know where you're going with this. So,
like, have we ruined our ability to have?
Absolutely not. So we haven't ruined it to the extent that we can see it. So this goes back to us being able to be introspective enough to say, this is not serving me from a systematic standpoint. And so there's action that needs to be taken to change that. Unfortunately, any action within the realm and sphere of government programs becomes incredibly difficult. And I say that from experience as a former government employee. Those types of actions, to unbundle the way that the government works, is brutally difficult.
Well, I think you start with a hatchet.
Or an axe.
You just start with an axe.
Grenade.
Cutting, cutting pieces away. All right, so this is good. I think, but we're getting at something which probably nobody ever gets at, which is in all of the arguing and yelling and screaming and breaking down in tears and arrogant huffing and puffing and everything else. What nobody ever gets at is, okay, how do we know what's in our effort to change things and make things better and better enable everybody to achieve better, richer, fuller, etc. How do we know what's right? Like, we don't have Jack Sparrow's like magic compass that always points to the right thing, irrespective of where.
We just don't. And it's a complex problem. And
solving that problem, or even just acknowledging that we don't automatically know that. Like, that's a huge step.
Oh yeah, well, that's the first step, right? I mean,
imagine if everybody who's like out there in like the mud pit, fighting with each other right now, all of a sudden, like, you can wave a wand, and in their brain, they suddenly realize that we don't automatically know the right thing to do.
Every 12-step program is the very first step is I have a problem.
How many of them are you familiar with?
Well, just, a limited number, but we'll keep that between us. But honestly, I mean, that's the very first step, is saying, hey, look, I don't have the answers, but I know that there's a problem, and I know that I'm part of the problem.
Right.
Okay, great.
Even collectively, we don't automatically know the right thing to do.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And actually, that's a wonderful thing, because if we all say, I don't know the solution, but we can have a conversation about what the solution should look like, what the outcome is that we're trying to achieve, and we can do that in a respectful, kind, generous way, perhaps we can shape towards that. I mean, that's a huge amount to ask, but it's feasible. To say that we've done that throughout the entire history of our country is to just say that we're misrepresenting history, because we've always had these types of conflicts.
Yeah, no, for sure. And the it's not like we just suddenly lost the ability to be civil.
No. I mean, take immigration, for example. I would say lately it's become such a hot topic. But look, I married an immigrant.
Where is she from?
She's from Cuba.
Oh.
And her family came to the United States legally.
Yeah.
They worked their asses off. Mm-hmm. Hopefully I can say that.
You're allowed.
Thank you. And
you can say whatever you want.
Great. And they lived a great middle-class life, retired. My father-in-law retired from GE. He did a great amount of work for them. He worked hard to make it happen.
Cuban people have an amazing work ethic.
Well, so I will say that his generation and my wife's generation absolutely do. Unfortunately,
not so much now.
Cubans that have been in a communist system where
their whole life, right?
There's no expectation. That structural enterprise has been sucked out of them because everything is either given by the government or forbidden. Now they don't really have the hustle that otherwise would have been there.
Yeah, that's sad. That's a shame, because
but I think that whole country of immigrants, melting pot behavior benefits us. Not only does it bring increasingly diverse thought processes to our country, but it also forces those of us who have been here for generations. I've known the 3 generations of Texans before me, by name and by face, and I'm sure that we have multiple generations before that. But that generation of immigrants forces me to step up my game, because they're pushing hard and they're working hard. So, but we as a country now think that we need to throw up some wall. And I'll just go on record. I think that every wall is meant to be scaled.
Yeah, fair enough. Yes.
But we've thrown up a wall against immigration to protect ourselves. There is no protection. The only thing that we really can do is learn from it, adapt, and continue to hustle and push.
Yeah. I think that that opens up a whole wide range of things that we didn't have time for.
Yeah,
we come back and have the immigration.
Stretch, right?
We can come back and have. I'll get you back. And we'll have the immigration discussion, because that is one area where I have been really conflicted over. And by conflicted, I don't mean that I'm like losing sleep at night and waking up in tears. I
noticed that you're well rested. So.
I don't know about that.
But I think, it's a tough topic.
But it's one where I find myself kind of coming down on different sides, because for a lot of reasons. But there's one aspect of it which, so I have floated the notion at times. I may have said it on the show. I don't know. We're like, maybe the whole melting pot thing's not a good idea, because people are tribal. People, you have different cultures. You look at what happens in other parts of the country where following some big war or something, Western powers came in and drew arbitrary boundaries for nations, and now they're just continuous conflict.
Yes.
And maybe we should just let everybody, let cultures kind of
Figure
let
themselves
everybody
out.
stick to their own people, basically, right? Like, and maybe the melting pot thing isn't a good idea. But most recently, I've also had the thought that when you think about all the different cultures in the United States and where the conflict comes from, the conflict is mostly being perpetuated by the people who aren't part of those cultures.
Right. Absolutely.
The people from it's the people who don't come from a specific culture who are just sort of generically American. We seem to be the ones that are creating all the issues, and the actual people, right?
So I have the privilege of growing up in Houston, where every single one of my friends was of some sort of different culture. I'll never forget, in third grade, I was actually buddied up with a Russian immigrant who didn't speak any English. Zero.
In Cyprus?
In Cypress, Texas, at Holbrook Elementary.
Wow.
I didn't speak any Russian. He didn't speak any English. But
clearly
we were buddied up, right? I speak a little Russian now, but that's different. But anyway, the entire objective was, I wanted to make sure that I could say hello, goodbye, thank you, and please.
In case you ever got caught with CBD oil in Russia.
I did work in Kazakhstan, right? And they speak Russian. So anyway, but we were in a melting pot there where all my friends were of different colors and different nationalities, and that was all good. I didn't actually think about that whole diversity aspect until I got outside of Houston when I was in the military. And now that diversity was not a part of everybody's lives. The only thing that was not diverse and inclusive for me when I was growing up was LGBTQ.
Yeah.
That was not a part of the in group. That was not a part of the blending, the melting pot. And although I've come around from that point of view, I think that love is love, and that's your thing to make happen, and I have no say in that. Go for it, knock your lights out. So I have a much better, broader, diverse perspective on that. That's not the blessing that everybody has been given within the United States. So if you're in the middle of this area where all you see are people that look like you, speak like you, have the same background as you, again, to your point previously, you get into that echo chamber of cultural diversity, and you think that you need to protect this.
Yeah.
There's a lot of
There's
value.
another can of worms you just opened there that I don't have time for.
Right. Like I said, there's a lot to this podcast. We could go down.
We could go, yeah.
So
well, because yeah. So no, but that's we should come back and do another. We'll do the immigration thing because it does. It comes back. That's a part of. If I connect all the dots here, because we covered some good ground. You had
a lot of territory.
You were
right?
smarter than I thought you were going to be.
Thank God.
So, saving the dream means, you got to. It's just like a classic vehicle, right? Like you got to maintain it.
Yeah.
If and you might have to do things to it along the way, and like they make you put a catalytic converter in it, and
right.
And as terrible as that is, you got to do it. So we have to make some tweaks and we have to change. And this notion but the great thing is that we live in a place where the system is designed such that we can change the system. But then you get into a difference of, well, what are the right kind of changes to make? Because if you change, if you change it fundamentally, then you no longer have the thing that got you right where you are.
Right.
And you might be shocked. Is that my phone?
Yeah, that's your phone, dude.
This is my phone. Oh, you know what? Because it's ringing on my iPad. I turned off my phone, but Apple is so smart, it makes it ring on everything. So you might be shocked to discover that you actually you broke it.
Yeah.
Right? You've changed it, and now you've broken it, and now it doesn't work anymore.
Guess what?
Yeah.
Go back and change it.
I change it, but
adjust the knobs.
But like what? But like we need that Jack Sparrow compass of like,
There's
how
no
do we
such
know?
thing.
But how do we know?
There's no oracle. There's no perfect voice out there, right?
Right. So we have to. But if we're going to make changes, we have to know.
So I think that there are some fundamental elements that we need to adopt, right? That whole introspective, how do I want to show up?
Right.
Can I value my fellow person in this conversation? Can I have a conversation that is
a specific conversation, or are you just talking about in general?
Any conversation, right? Can I have that conversation with that person in a way that we genuinely respect one another, even if we totally disagree?
Right.
And can I get to an outcome that directionally serves the greater good? And look, there's nothing perfect out of that.
Right. So that's very clear, rational, insightful thinking.
I'm not so sure, but
the first question. The first objective is, you got to get a bunch of other people to think that way too.
Which will go back to Fight Club.
Yeah, which goes back to Fight Club, which is why we have this podcast. Which
we need to get a group.
Which we need to wrap up. So because I think actually there's going to be some people walking through that door here in a minute. So
terrifying.
But we should. This is good stuff. And Corey Vickers, thank you for coming over here and making time. And we're going to come back. I really would like to, especially since you're the spouse of an immigrant. We had Ration on and stuff like that.
Yeah, Ration was great.
Yeah,
too,
maybe, you know what? Maybe I get both of you guys to come on here.
Oh man,
we talk
love
about immigration
for sure.
You can. There's space on the sofa.
Yeah,
you don't have to
there.
sit. You don't have to sit too close to each other.
That's good.
And
but I'm comfortable as long as he is.
because you're enlightened now.
Right. I'm enlightened. I'm the monk.
You're the monk. All right. Thank you, Corey. Thanks.
My pleasure.
That's it. We're
Absolutely.
done.
Enjoyed
We're
it.
Finished.